Hey everybody, it's Spear, and we are back to wrap up the Archetype 101s. I know they're supposed to happen last week, but based on how life things happen and the different types of content I've had to make, I opted to just push these into this week. So we're going to be covering the last two archetypes, and the reason I pushed these to the end is just because there's some of the more confusing archetypes explicitly on how the pieces come together, especially Mono Blue Paikuhan. I've been stalling on talking about this deck for a while because I can't wrap my head around exactly how I'm supposed to properly explain it. But I broke it down the pieces and we're going to get through it together. And you know what? If you're still confused in the end, that's fine, because I'm probably still confused by the end of it. So we'll get through it together. But with that said, guys, before I jump into it, I stream on Twitch every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and on weekends for tournament streams. You guys want to catch me live, links to that will be in the description down below. With that said, let's jump into Mono Blue Paikuhan. Or Paikuhan, I don't know, they've been flipping around the way we call this leader, but in the cards it's Paikuhan. So a quick overview of the archetype. We are looking at a top deck manipulation style deck. Very similar to the things that Ginyu was doing, or that Invoker does with Arena, where you're basically making sure you always have what you want on top of the deck for X amount of effects. Here it tends to be things like free playing or setting up for fusion plays in the future. It's very bounce centric. Basically, you're using your cards to being able to bounce this one drop over and over and over again to accrue a bunch of value. And if it's not the one drop, it's a bunch of other cards. So it's very focused on triggers happening because you're bouncing cards off your board. And then finally, there's just a lot going on. And this is why this deck can be so confusing to talk about, because it feels like every time you're doing one thing, it triggers 3 different abilities, and then doing those things procs a bunch of other abilities, and it just feels like the most Yu-Gi-Oh strategy I've really ever looked at by how much different things are going on. Or maybe Magic, very similar to Miracles or something like that. But there's a million things going on with this deck, so we're just gonna have to break through it piece by piece. First off, kicking off with the leader, Pikkon. When this card attacks, look at the top 2 cards from top of your deck. You get to add 1 mono blue card among them to your hand, and then place the remaining cards on top of your deck in any order. Choose up to 1 Pikkon card with energy cost of 3 or less and return it to its owner's hand. So here's the bounce effect, right? Our leader allows us to bounce. We're going to see what specifically that does for us when we get to the Pikkons in the deck. But it's selective draw, which is really sweet. Being able to look at 2 cards, set up 1 on top of your deck, which works well with the deck, as well as being able to pick which one you want in your hand is really strong. It's like a dig deep draw, and especially with all these mono-type archetypes, it's not that big of a deal. The difference here being, though, you will have to reveal the card you put in hand. Because it specifically says you need a specific kind of card, you're going to have to reveal it to your opponent. So generally, your opponent is going to have a pretty good information on what's in your hand. So that's something to take into account for as you play this deck. Awaken, when your life is at 4 or less, you get to draw a card, switch up to 1 your energy in active mode, and then flip this card over. On the Awaken side, we have Paikuhan, Penetrating Strike, 15k. When this card attacks, you get to look at the top 2 cards, take a mono blue card, set it on top of your deck, and then take a Pikkon with the cost of 3 or less and add it to your hand. And one of your opponent's battle cards when it costs 3 or less and return it to the owner's hand. Now it's sweet because you have a removal option in your deck that relies on your opponent's weenies, which is really cool. Having that for free is really dope. It's stally because it doesn't bottom deck or anything like that, so your opponent's still going to be able to deploy that threat. But because you're able to get it off board, it's pretty cool. And it procs before they can even activate block or anything like that, if that's something that you have to worry about. Activate main once per turn, look at top 3 cards from your deck and put them back in any order. This is super powerful. This is the level of power level where any deck that really wants deck manipulation, you can just look and use this leader, because it doesn't matter. There's no requirement here. Sure, this is the deck where you'd rather play mono blue because all your draw is related to mono blue, but strategies outside of Pikkon that are in blue that really rely on top decking and setting up the top of your deck could work really well alongside this, just because innately on the leader, you have the ability to manipulate the top of your deck. Then we have the fusion pieces. Pikkon is a fusion-centric deck. So you have Gogeta, the Demon Destroyer. Oddly enough, these aren't actually Union fusions. They're fusion cards, and they use Gokus and Vegetas, but they're not fusions. They're just because of the way the deck works, which makes them a little awkward. Unique barrier, dual attack, 25k. Activate main for triple green if your leader guard is a blue Pikkon, and you place 1 blue Sun Goku card and 1 Vegeta card when each cost a 1 from your deck in your drop area, and then shuffle your deck. Play this card from your hand. So it's not a Union Fusion because obviously you need the cards are in your deck, but it's even more powerful because you don't need the pieces in your hand, meaning that you can really set up your hand to be very strong and set up for this play and not have to worry about having your pieces, which tends to be one of the downfalls of a Union Fusion deck. Additionally, as an activate main, once per turn, burst 1 and a blue. If your lead card is a Blue Paikuhan leader and you have 4 more energy. If the card placed in your drop area with this skill was a blue Gogeta card with energy cost of 8, play it on top of this card. So what this is basically saying is, did you burst the Gogeta? You get to evolve on top of it. Really weird, really interesting, but a great way to be able to cheat. Again, it's like an evolve, but because the way it works with deck meter, it's not an evolve. And then already we have the leader that's able to set up the top of your deck any way you want. And we'll see additional cards in the deck that allow you to do so as well. The 8-drop being Gogeta Godspeed Demolisher. He's a 30k double striker dual attacker. He can also EX evolve for double blue, which is kind of nice. It means that if he's not on top of your deck, hey, you don't have to worry about it. You can just EX evolve on top of this 5-drop Gogeta. Auto once per turn if your lead card is mono blue. When his card is played or your opponent activates a battle card skill, choose up to 2 of your opponent's battle cards and return them to their owner's hand. This is really interesting, right? Especially because we have a skill trigger and we don't see too many of these cards existing. So already there, you're killing off your opponent's board, you're reducing their tempo, which can be really annoying. On top of this, like really nasty auto where if your leader is mono blue and you have 6 or fewer cards in your hand, at the end of your opponent's turn, they choose 3 cards from their hand and place the rest at the bottom of their deck in any order. This is super powerful. It's very reminiscent of the old Gogeta that we used to have, or like Cell Chain, where your opponent is choosing cards out of their hand and then they're left with 3, which is super powerful. Granted, you can't be at like 10 cards in hand, but that's fine. This deck can set up a 6-card hand pretty easily and you punish your opponent really hard. So while it's not insane, and it doesn't have a ton of protection, I mean, it basically has none once you get to the 8-drop, setting this up is pretty easy and can be very punishing for your opponent. Then we have Veku making excuses. Unique blocker 1k and 1 permanent. This card can't be KO'd in battle. That's really sweet. It means as a blocker he's never going to die, right? He's always going to be on board unless your opponent decides to proc him up with a skill. Then he has an activate main burst 3 if your leader card is a Pikkon. If you place at least 1 blue Son Goku and 1 blue Vegeta card in your drop area with the skill, play this card from your hand. If you didn't play this card, discard it instead. So basically, did you set up the top of your deck to be able to play this out? Great, you're gonna have a blocker that basically never dies outside of skills, which is pretty annoying because it means your opponent's gonna have to waste removal on this card. So while it doesn't seem super powerful in a stuff type deck, this could be pretty good. So it definitely lends itself to being defensive if that's what you're looking for. And then finally, we have the promo Veku, the unpredictable, another 1k and 1 with a 5 cost and a permanent. This card can't be used in combos from battle areas. At the start of your turn, your opponent gains control of this card. It is such a weird card. Like, it is so insanely weird that I'm saying you might have to pick up 4 foils to set up a playset, because weird cards like these are always cards that end up breaking the game in one way or another. So while it's the weirdest card that I don't see really all that many synergies for, it's the kind of card that gets me thinking. It's the kind of card I want to pick up because I'm like, maybe there's something there I'm not picking up. Maybe there'll be something there in the future that I don't understand. So if it's specific to this archetype, I'll be honest, guys, I have no idea what it's meant to do. In Pikkon, I have no idea what this is meant to do. But I'm saying in the future, there might be something. I think this is kind of a cool idea. Also, the auto is weird, right? So you're going to play this card, and then at the end or start of your turn. So at the end of your turn, it goes to your opponent's turn, but then they start their turn, so it goes back to you. So the way it sets up, the way it actually works out with the autos, is that you're never going to have it on your turn, and your opponent's never going to have it on their turn. I don't know what this is supposed to set up, but it's something. You know, like let's say you have a leader like the Goku that gains like quad strike if your opponent has 4 battle cards. Maybe you're cheeky and you do it like this. I don't know. The card's really strange. I really don't know what it's meant to work with, but it's so strange that like I'm really interested in picking them up just to see where the game could go with it in the future. When we look at the Aggro Chain, we have Son Goku Fusion Synergy, a 1-drop 5k. You get to add 1 card from your life to your hand, and if you do, you get 10k critical. 10k critical is super sweet in blue. You know, now we have double strikers, and we've seen them push these cards into basically every single archetype in the game now, or every single color, I should say. So it's not shocking that we're seeing this now in blue. It was only really a matter of time, I guess. Then we have Vegeta Fusion Synergy, 1-drop 5k. When this card is played, you get to draw a card. So a lot of little weenies that can accrue you a bunch of value. We have Son Goku Heavy Hitter, 10k barrier permanent. This card can't be played from any area except by skills. So by doing like burst abilities and free playing him. Activate main, if your lead card is a Blue Paikuhan card and you discard this card, look at up to 3 cards from the top of your deck. You get to add up to 1 Mono Blue Saiyan or West Galaxy Warrior with an energy cost of 5 or less among them to your hand, and then place the remaining cards on top of your deck in any order. So again, more deck manipulation, which is great. Then you get to place this card on top of your deck from your drop area. You can't activate main skills on copies of this card for the rest of the turn. So you're setting him up on top of your deck, which is fine. We want Goku's on top of a deck. We want Vegeta's on top of our deck, especially if you're setting up some of these fusion plays. Then we have Vegeta Sentinel from Hell. 1-drop 10k blocker permanent. This card can't be played from any area except by skills. If your leader card is a Blue Paikuhan leader and you discard this card, look at top 3 cards from top of your deck, add up to 1 Saiyan, 1 Weskai, and you can put them out to your deck. Same ability, but instead it's on a Vegeta instead of a Son Goku. And then finally, we have the promo Son Goku and Vegeta Saiyan Synergy, a 1-cost counterattack. Negate the attack and play this card. If your lead card is blue and you place this card in rest mode at the bottom of your owner's deck, when your opponent attacks a leader card, choose up to 1 of your leader cards and it gets 5k power for the turn. It's kind of cool. It's like a Senzu Bean basically on a counterattack. So I think it's pretty sweet. It can be annoying. It can serve, like it stops a really big attack. It beans for the rest of the turn. So against things like a Booney, this is super strong. It's a sweet card. Do I think it's amazing? No. Obviously, they can counterplay around this by like killing this card since it is played in rest mode. But if your opponent just decides to ignore it and go for your leader instead, you can punish them by saying like, you know what? Hey, now I have a bean. When we look at the consistency pieces of the deck, this is where we're going to see the Pikkons. So Pikkon, Flawless Technique, a 1-cost 4k. If your leader card is a Blue Pikkon card, when this card is played, you get to draw 1 card, add up to 1 card from your life to your hand, and then choose 1 card in your hand and place it at top of your deck. Deck manipulation. Auto burst 1. If your leader is a Blue Pikkon card, when this card is removed from your battle area by a skill, so like your leader bouncing it back to your hand, if the card you placed in the drop area with the skill was a Son Goku or Vegeta with an energy cost of 1, you may play them with their skills negated for the turn, and that's how you're basically playing those Gokus and Vegetas that we were seeing beforehand. So again, you're getting proc for being able to bounce card off the list. He gets a proc for being played. So you're really getting a lot of consistency by being able to bounce this same 1-drop over and over and over again. This other 1-drop we have is Pikkon supporting his comrades. Auto, when this card is played, look at up to 2 cards from the top of your deck, add up to 1 mono blue card among them to your hand, and then place the remaining cards at the top or bottom, which is great. You can pitch it away of your deck in any order. You can't play copies of this card for the turn, so this will only happen once. So stronger manipulation, but only happens once a turn. And then auto burst 1. If your leader card is a Blue Pikkon card, when this card is removed from your battle area by a skill, if the card you place in your drop area has a Blue Son Goku or Vegeta, you get to play it. So same thing as the other 1-drop. And finally, the 3-cost Pikkon, Stalling for Time. He's a 10k blocker with an auto. If your lead card is a Blue Pikkon card and you don't have a Gogeta card in play, when one of your cards is returned to your hand from your battle area, play this card from your hand and you can't play copies of this card for the turn. So now we're seeing how multiple things proc all the time because you're pitching off like a Pikkon, right? So I'm playing a Pikkon, I draw a card, I set up the top of my deck, and then I bounce a Pikkon back to my hand, which triggers the burst. The burst allows me to play like a Goku and Vegeta. Oh, also I can reveal this Pikkon now and free play him if I don't have a Gogeta on board. So you can see there's a million things happening here. On top of the fact that when we hit the Unison, they do even more things. So there's a lot of like, whoa, a million things happening here. Then he has an auto that if you have 3 or more energy, when this card is removed from your battle by an opponent's skill or is KO'd, activate the skill. At the start of your next main phase, you may pay double blue. If you do, choose up to 1 blue Gogeta card in your hand with an energy cost of 5 and play it. So this is like a delayed cost, which is really interesting. I don't think we've ever really seen this in a game before, but basically saying, hey, did you KO this? And this could be by skill or by he blocked, right? Because if he's KO'd, it procs off too. Well, sweet. Now I'm going to be able to set up and cheat in my Gogeta. So even more consistency to an already consistent deck being able to get out the 5-drop. When we look at the Unison, we have Frieza and Cell, a match made in hell. I hate that. I hate that rhymes. A 2-cost 15k Unison with Rejuvenate. So of course you can remove 4 markers in the card from under to be able to gain a life. It's pretty sweet. Auto once per turn, when a card in a battle area is returned to its owner's hand by a skill, you get to draw 1 card, then choose 1 card in your hand and place it at the top or bottom of your deck. There we go. Even more interaction with the fact that we're bouncing cards over and over again. Now we get to draw a card. We get to place a card on top of our deck. So many different things happening here. With a +1, you get to choose up to 1 blue battle card in your hand where it costs a 1 and play it. So now, on turn 2, we're still getting the procs from our 1-drop Pikkon. So we can play Pikkon turn 1, we can play Pikkon turn 2. Or even then, in the later turns, we can keep on playing similar 1-drops over and over and over again, which is super powerful, super sweet, and great for the consistency of the deck. On top of that, there is the super combo. So I added this Unison section because it's a great way to be able to add cards under the Unison to be able to rejuvenate. So it's something to keep in mind. Will you run this one? I don't know. There's an argument to make that it's probably fine to just put another Frieza and Cell under it and you'd probably get the rejuvenate anyways. But if you want to run this one to secure yourself to rejuvenate, it's something you can definitely do. When we look at the good stuff, because Blue just has access to a bunch of random good stuff, and I figure you'd probably run in this because like you can look at, since your Gogeta stuff plays itself from the deck, most of it, and you don't really want the Gokus and Vegetas in your hand, then what you want in your hand is good stuff, right? So, hey, why not? And some of this good stuff is like stupid good. Like, I don't get it. So here we have a 3-cost Great Saiyaman, Punisher of Evil, a 15k Deflect, Barrier, Blocker, Revenge. With an auto at once per turn, if this card KOs an opponent's battle card, you can switch it up to active mode and you get 1 energy. So he's a dual blocker and he gives you an energy. Like, what is this card? Why does it do a million things? It's got like the best protection in the game. It has blocker, as revenge. Your opponent's never going to want to attack. Guess what? They did attack and you protected this. Guess what? You get an energy back and he gets to block again. Like, this card is weird. Like, your opponent needs to deal with this because he's not going to punch through otherwise. It is so weird and janky, but I love it. This card is sick. So, I don't know. It's very weird. I don't totally understand it, but I think it's super sweet. Then we have Gotenks battling the forces of evil, a 4-cost 20k, deflect, double strike, barrier. So again, the best protection in the game. Before, blue had to choose between deflect or between barrier, right? Between a Boonie or Maricham, depending on what decks you're trying to do. Well, guess what? How about we have both? But instead of going wide, he is just a double striker. But with the added benefit that auto once per turn, if your opponent activates a counter skill during a battle with this card, choose all your opponent's battle cards ignoring barrier, return them to the hand. So it's a barrier ignoring board wipe. Oh, and then you get to switch up to 2 of your energy to active mode. What is with these blue cards? Why are they so good? Like, one, these cards are going to be amazing in anything that can play them, right, guys? Granted, the Great Saiyaman is like 3 required blue, so it's going to be a very blue specific type of card. With the Gotenks costing 2 blue, so it's still splashable. A bit tougher, but still splashable in other decks. That said, these are just insane cards. Like, I don't know, guys. Like, I guess they figured blue needed some power level up, so here it is. You want to run some blue good stuff on top of your like fusion stuff? Here it is. Finally, we have the SCR. Miraculous Fighter SS3 Gogeta is an 8-cost Gogeta. So why the card isn't amazing? Because it's really not. It is something you can play and it works really well with the fact that the Gokus and Vegetas that you're comboing off with end up going to your drop. So you get to EX evolve on a Gogeta with a cost of 7 or more, so you can go on top of the 8 cost if that's what you want. Or you can just cheat him out and play him on top of the 5 cost like we see with the 5 cost ability. Then he has a critical. He's got deflect, which is nice. He will hit board. And then activate main sparking 15. If you get rid of a Goku and a Vegeta, he restands. It's fine. It's okay. It's not the most busted card, but hey, it's a synergy that's there. If you have the card and you've been meaning or itching to really play it for a long time, you could go down that route if you want. So that's Mono Blue Paikuhan, guys. We made it. We got through it together. So here's the thing. Even though I explained it, and you can kind of get the idea, right? You want to play your Pikkon so that you can bounce them back to your hand so that you can free play Gokus and Vegetas, and then eventually set up for a Gogeta play on top of just having a bunch of blue good stuff mixed in. Simple in like the idea, but in practice, that's going to be a lot of different triggers you need to manage, right? Especially when you consider the Unison, the Pikkon, the bursting, the top of the deck manipulation, all that jazz is definitely a lot to handle and something that you need to keep in mind when you pick up this deck. With that said, I think it's going to be super interesting and I'm actually super down to know how you guys would build it. So let me know in the comments down below exactly how you guys would build Pikkon. With that said, you guys liked the video? We're doing our last Archetype 101 coming out tomorrow, so keep your eyes out peeled for that. So subscribe button's in the corner if you want to get that. And if you like the video, hey, thumbs up. If you dislike it, thumbs down. And with that said, I'll catch you guys on the next one.